Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now, Anthony Joshua seems to have been bulking back up since his win over Andy Ruiz Jr. Obviously, he came into that fight quite light, 16 stone, 13 pounds, which was quite light considering Anthony Joshua usually is around 17 and 17 and a half stone when he's at his best. 18 stone is probably too heavy for Anthony Joshua, but still, he seems to have gone back up to that. Maybe not 18 stone, but he has packed on the muscle again. Now, obviously, for the Ruiz rematch, he needed to be lighter because his game plan entailed him doing that. Obviously, being lighter on his feet, having that stamina, going late. Whereas against a Kubrat Pulev, maybe it would be better to be a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, maybe sit down on those shots a little bit more, get a bit more power into them. Because against Ruiz, he could hurt Ruiz often, but ultimately, was he really going to knock him out? Maybe he could have. But the thing is about Ruiz, if you go in there trying to knock him out, then you're kind of gambling because he can punch. Also, he's fast as well. And on the inside, you're fighting to Ruiz's strength. So box him on the outside and keep it simple. That's what Anthony Joshua done. Although it wasn't that simple, it's still a very skillful and technical game plan to have and execute for AJ in that rematch. And it was jab, keep him on the end of the jab, and hit him hard and often. He could hurt Ruiz. It's just, does he really want to gamble and go for the knockout like he done last time? So it was about getting the result against Ruiz, boxing on the outside, keeping it long. Whereas against Kubrat Pulev, Anthony Joshua is the better fighter in there with Pulev. He can fight better at that mid-range and on the inside. So Anthony Joshua is going to be the one who takes the center of the ring in that fight. He's going to be the one dominating the pace, the tempo, and the distance of the fight. Whereas Ruiz took center ring in the rematch and in the first fight at points as well, was taking the center of the ring. So I think that in this fight with Pulev, AJ will take the center of the ring, and that is why he can be a bit heavier because he won't be expending as much energy by boxing on the outside, keeping it long and using his movement as well. So he doesn't necessarily have to be so light. He can be a bit heavier, sit down on his shots, and obviously he's going to need to be quite strong in there with Pulev because what Pulev does is he rushes forwards, and if he's not going to get his shots away, he falls in on his opponent, starts grappling. So what AJ is going to need to do is be strong on the inside. So having a bit more muscle and being a bit heavier will help him with that as well. Now, I know that there have been some concerns about Anthony Joshua's stamina going late, and that is attributed to his big muscles and obviously the lactic acid kicking in. So he does struggle going late into fights, but he often gets that second wind. But it's just about getting to that point. So that is always the worry when Anthony Joshua is a little bit heavier, especially like in the Klitschko fight. He was too heavy for that fight, really. And he was lucky enough to get through the worst part and get his second wind. Against Ruiz, wasn't so lucky. So in this fight with Pulev, he doesn't necessarily want to be too heavy, but he doesn't need to be as light as he was against Andy Ruiz Jr. Also, Anthony Joshua will be working on those things in training anyway, and as I said, he won't be expending as much energy if he's fighting in the center of the ring and dictating the tempo and the distance of the fight. Now, Anthony Joshua doesn't necessarily get tired, or any other peak athlete really in the ring. They don't get tired when they are in control of the distance and tempo of the fight. AJ was in the rematch with Ruiz. You expend a lot more energy when you are not in control of those things. He wasn't really in the first fight with Ruiz after that third round. And that can play a big factor because you start burning nervous energy as well then, and lactic acid kicks in, and that's just it. It's really hard to get your second wind when that kicks in. So ultimately, Anthony Joshua in this fight with Pulev will be heavier. I think we can all agree on that. He's not going to be like he was in Ruiz. Different horses for different courses. He doesn't necessarily have to go in there in the same way. And as I said, Pulev will be working a lot more on grappling, holding, trying to pull AJ around, and smothering Anthony Joshua's work. Because AJ is the more skillful fighter than Pulev. Punches harder, better jab, better movement. So what Pulev can do is try and use his size and strength against Anthony Joshua. He's a similar size to AJ as well, so he's going to try and maul AJ on the inside. Not work, he's going to try and pull him around, smother AJ's work. So Anthony Joshua being a little bit heavier probably will benefit him in a fight with Pulev, as opposed to a fight with Andy Ruiz Jr., where he is working on the outside. Now, I believe we can expect to see a game Kubrat Pulev coming into this fight because this is his last opportunity. His last opportunity at a big payday, his last opportunity at a world title. And realistically in the heavyweight division, it doesn't get much bigger than an Anthony Joshua fight. Maybe Tyson Fury, but ultimately Kubrat Pulev has this big defining moment against AJ in November or December whenever this fight happens. So he's going to bring his A game. This is the last chance saloon for Kubrat Pulev to win a world title, to make a name for himself and a legacy in the sport of boxing. Last time out, against Vladimir Klitschko, his last world title fight, he just couldn't find it. He could not get into that second gear. He could not start moving through the motions. It was just like he froze. He was like a rabbit in the headlights. Whereas maybe against Anthony Joshua, he will be a little bit more seasoned and ready for what comes. It's not going to be like the Klitschko fight. It's probably going to be, I suppose it's not going to be in a stadium because ultimately that's not going to happen in November. It's probably going to be at the O2 in front of 10, 15,000 maybe if they're lucky. Maybe even as low as 2,000. So that won't play on Pulev's mind so much. I think that if he walked out into a stadium of 70, 80, maybe 90,000 people, that would cause Kubrat Pulev some problems. But he doesn't have that. So maybe that does work in Pulev's favour because AJ is used to that. Pulev is not. So maybe having less of a crowd there will benefit Kubrat Pulev in this fight with AJ because, as I said, AJ is used to that, Pulev isn't. So that's one obstacle that Kubrat Pulev does not have to worry about because you can be a great fighter in the gym and in training, but ultimately when the fight happens, things change completely. Game plans and all of that can be disrupted by the crowd and they will all be cheering on AJ as well. So that would be difficult for Kubrat Pulev to maintain that mental strength and his game plan as well in there when there are 70,000 fans chanting Anthony Joshua. Now, there are calls for Anthony Joshua to go back to basics and go back to how he was during his early career. Obviously explosive, powerful, go for the knockout, not worry too much about what's coming back. But ultimately, that's early on in his career. The opponents reflect what he is able to do as well. Anthony Joshua is very skilled, so he doesn't necessarily have to just rely on his power and those fast combinations. There's more that he can do. But against Kubrat Pulev, maybe once he gets Kubrat Pulev hurt, he can get him out of there because Kubrat Pulev does not have the resistance of an Andy Ruiz Jr. Against Andy Ruiz Jr., that shot that put him down in the third round would likely knock out Kubrat Pulev, or at least even if he got up, would not be able to make it out of the third round. He does not have the chin of Andy Ruiz Jr. So once Anthony Joshua catches Kubrat Pulev with a good shot, I think that Kubrat Pulev stays hit from then on. I don't think that Pulev will recover, and I just think that Anthony Joshua's finishing instincts will take over and be too much for Pulev, because Kubrat Pulev, when he is hurt, will likely retreat to the ropes where Anthony Joshua will work away at him, or he will stand there in the centre of the ring with his feet square like he did against Vladimir Klitschko, and that is even more devastating than retreating to the ropes. Andy Ruiz Jr. could do it because he is an inside fighter and he has that Mexican style. He likes to trade up on the inside. So that knockdown in that third round created an opportunity for Andy Ruiz, whereas Kubrat Pulev does not have that same ability on the inside as Andy Ruiz Jr. Anthony Joshua is the inside fighter in this fight. So once Anthony Joshua gets Kubrat Pulev hurt, I believe that it's go time. I believe that Anthony Joshua will get him out of there because I just don't think that Kubrat Pulev has the ability to recover. I don't believe that Kubrat Pulev going backwards and retreating will do him any good. I don't believe that standing there trading with Anthony Joshua will also do him any good. He can try and hold, but as I said before, Anthony Joshua may be a bit bulkier and heavier and stronger, will be the stronger man in there as well. So he will be able to work out of those clinches. It will be Kubrat Pulev who is more likely to get tired on the inside by grappling than Anthony Joshua, especially when Pulev is hurt. I don't believe that Kubrat Pulev possesses what he needs in order to deal with Anthony Joshua. I don't believe he has the attributes, and I believe that Kubrat Pulev is tailor-made for Anthony Joshua. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe if you are new. Thanks, guys.